Hello everyone, welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight we will talk about whether consciousness remembers every life you've ever lived. Across cultures and generations, humans have wondered if the essence of who we are continues beyond one lifetime. The question goes even deeper. Not just whether consciousness survives, but whether it keeps a record, a kind of memory that extends across multiple existences. Imagine for a moment that everything you've experienced, not just in this life but in countless others, is stored somewhere in the architecture of your mind or in a field that consciousness is tethered to. What would that mean about who you are and what you truly remember? This idea has fascinated philosophers, scientists, mystics, and psychologists for centuries. On one hand, neuroscience often frames memory as a function of the brain, a product of neurons firing in networks shaped by experience. But on the other hand, there are traditions in Eastern philosophy, such as Hinduism and Buddhism, that speak of reincarnation and karmic imprints. These traditions suggest that consciousness carries traces of every existence, sometimes surfacing in dreams, instincts, or feelings of déjà vu. Then there are modern accounts, from children who seem to recall past lives to experiments in hypnosis that appear to unlock experiences outside of a person's present biography. To unpack this, we need to ask several key questions. What is consciousness, and how does memory actually work? Could memory exist outside the brain, in a larger field of information? And if so, could it be possible that what we call intuition, déjà vu, or sudden inspiration might be glimpses of experiences lived in other times, perhaps in other bodies? The fascinating thing about this subject is that it sits at the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, philosophy, and spiritual traditions. No single field has the full answer, but each provides part of the puzzle. In neuroscience, memory is often compared to storage on a computer. The hippocampus, located in the temporal lobe, plays a central role in forming new memories. When you experience something, neural pathways encode the event into patterns of electrical and chemical activity. Later, recalling that memory involves reactivating those pathways. But here's the catch. Memories are not perfect snapshots. They are reconstructed every time we bring them to mind, which is why they can shift or fade over time. That alone raises a question. If the brain is fallible, yet people sometimes claim memories of other lives, could consciousness store information in a different way outside of this fragile biological system? Some researchers argue for the concept of non-local consciousness, the idea that awareness is not generated by the brain, but rather accessed through it, much like a radio tunes into signals. If this is true, then memory could also be non-local, existing in what some have called the Akashic field, a universal record of all events and experiences. The Akashic Records, a concept from theosophy and mysticism, describe an energetic imprint of everything that has ever happened and potentially everything that ever will. While mainstream science doesn't validate this idea, the metaphor is compelling. If such a record exists, consciousness might indeed be able to tap into experiences from lifetimes long past. Interestingly, cases of past life memories in children have been documented by researchers such as Dr. Ian Stevenson, who studied thousands of accounts across cultures. Many of these children describe specific details about places, names, and events that later were verified by investigation. While skeptics argue these could be coincidences or unconscious information transfer, the sheer number of cases makes it harder to dismiss entirely. These stories suggest that memory, at least in some circumstances, may not be confined to the brain we are born with. Psychology has also contributed to the debate through the use of past life regression therapy. Under hypnosis, some individuals claim to access vivid experiences of lives they never consciously knew about. They describe landscapes, historical settings, and identities with a richness that feels real to them. While critics suggest these might be confabulations, the brain filling in details with imagination, others propose that regression could be a key to unlocking consciousness beyond the current lifetime. Whether true or not, the phenomenon itself points to a deeper complexity in how memory and identity are intertwined. From a scientific perspective, the concept of quantum information offers another intriguing possibility. In quantum physics, information is never truly lost. It may transform, but it persists at some level in the fabric of reality. If consciousness is somehow linked to quantum processes, as suggested by theories like Orc-OR, proposed by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, then it's conceivable that memory too might be encoded in quantum fields beyond the brain. This could explain how information survives the death of the body and perhaps becomes accessible in future lifetimes. Yet we should also consider the philosophical side. What does it mean if you have lived many lives and carry those memories unconsciously? Do they shape your personality, your fears, your talents? For instance, someone with an unexplainable phobia of water might, in this framework, be carrying a memory of drowning in a past life. Conversely, a natural musical prodigy might be expressing skills honed across many lifetimes. These interpretations might not fit into the scientific method neatly, but they resonate with many personal experiences. Cultural traditions expand on this further. Hindu philosophy introduces the idea of samskaras, subtle impressions left on the soul by every action, thought, and experience. These impressions carry over from life to life, influencing behavior and destiny until they are resolved. Buddhism speaks of karmic imprints, not as fixed memories, but as tendencies that arise and shape future existence. Both suggest that memory is not simply about recalling facts, but about carrying patterns of experience across time. This creates a continuity of consciousness that goes beyond one life story. We can also think about this question through the lens of collective memory. Carl Jung proposed the concept of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of archetypes and shared experiences inherited by humanity as a whole. While not the same as remembering past lives, it introduces the idea that consciousness connects to something larger than the individual brain. Perhaps when people feel they are remembering another life, they are tapping into a vast network of shared human memory, blurring the line between personal and collective experience. Another important question is why we don't consciously remember every life if they truly exist. If consciousness carries the memory, why are our minds blank when we're born? One explanation is that remembering every detail of every existence would overwhelm the brain. Forgetting might serve a purpose, allowing us to focus on the present without the burden of countless past experiences. However, glimpses of past lives might slip through in certain states. Dreams, meditation, altered consciousness, when the normal filters of the brain are loosened. Dreams themselves can feel like a laboratory for exploring this mystery. People sometimes dream of identities, places, and times they've never encountered in waking life. Some researchers dismiss this as the brain assembling fragments of imagination, but others wonder if dreams might be a doorway through which consciousness samples memories stored outside the brain. If true, then our nightly journeys could occasionally open windows into lives we once lived, hidden beneath the surface of ordinary awareness. All of this brings us back to the central question: does consciousness remember every life you've ever lived? The evidence is suggestive but not conclusive. Neuroscience grounds us in the material workings of memory, while philosophy and spirituality extend the idea into realms beyond what can be measured in a lab. The possibility remains open, and perhaps the truth lies in a synthesis: that consciousness is both shaped by the brain and connected to something larger, a field of memory that transcends time and death. As we explore this topic tonight, keep in mind that the answers may not be black and white. They may lie in the interplay between science and mystery, logic and wonder. What matters most is the question itself, because it pushes us to consider who we are, where we come from, and what it truly means to be conscious. Whether memory ends with the brain or extends across lifetimes, it forces us to see ourselves as more than fleeting beings bound by one timeline. And with that, let's begin the deeper journey into this profound question. At first glance, memory feels simple. You remember your childhood home, your favourite teacher, or an event from last week. But beneath that surface, memory is astonishingly complex, and the way it works is not fully understood, even by neuroscience today. Understanding memory at its deepest levels might give us clues as to whether it can survive the death of the body and persist into other forms of existence. There are several different types of memory, each handled in slightly different ways by the brain. Episodic memory allows you to recall personal events, such as your first day at school. Semantic memory holds facts, like the capital of a country. Procedural memory stores learned skills, such as riding a bicycle or playing an instrument. These are stored in different neural circuits, and each involves unique patterns of brain activity. Yet all forms of memory share one important quality. They involve encoding information, storing it in some way, and then retrieving it later. But here is the puzzle. The cells in our brains are constantly dying and being replaced, yet memories often endure for decades. If memory is just the arrangement of molecules in neurons, how does it persist through so much biological change? Some researchers suggest that memory must be stored in a more fundamental way, perhaps in the very electromagnetic or quantum processes that underlie the brain's function. This opens the door to speculation that memory could exist beyond the brain, carried by consciousness itself, not just by physical tissue. Think about the difference between hardware and software. The brain might be like hardware, a device through which consciousness operates. But consciousness could be the software, or perhaps even the cloud service that isn't stored only on the machine. If that metaphor holds, then memory doesn't have to vanish when the body stops working. Instead, it could be uploaded, transferred, or integrated into a wider field of information that consciousness is always connected to. This is one of the boldest ideas at the frontier of both neuroscience and philosophy. One way to consider this possibility is to look at how fragile and unreliable ordinary memory can be, and yet how persistent certain impressions remain. For example, a single traumatic experience can leave a permanent scar on the psyche, even if the details fade. Sometimes people don't consciously remember the event but still carry its emotional weight, manifesting as anxiety or avoidance behaviors. If one event can imprint itself so deeply that it shapes a lifetime without clear conscious recall, could the same mechanism explain how past life experiences might influence us without us remembering them clearly? Scientists studying epigenetics have found that trauma can alter the way genes are expressed, and those changes can sometimes be passed to future generations. This shows that memory, in a broad sense, can survive beyond the individual. It doesn't have to be a perfect snapshot of an event. It can be a subtle influence that travels forward, affecting behaviour and health long after the original cause has faded. While this is not the same as past life memory, it offers a scientific model for how experiences might ripple across time in ways that outlive the body. Another fascinating clue comes from déjà vu. Nearly everyone has experienced it, the sudden eerie feeling that you've lived a moment before, even though logically you know you haven't. Neuroscientists often explain déjà vu as a glitch in the brain's memory systems, where new experiences are mistakenly processed as familiar. But some people interpret it differently, as a brief overlap with a memory from another lifetime. Could it be that déjà vu is not just an error, but a tiny leak in the barrier between lives, allowing fragments of older experiences to seep through? Dreams, too, are filled with mystery. People frequently dream of times, places, and identities they've never known in waking life. A dreamer might find themselves walking down the streets of a medieval town or living as a person with a completely different background. The conventional explanation is that dreams stitch together fragments of imagination and memory. But for those who believe in the continuity of consciousness, these dreams could be fragments of past life recall, surfacing when the rational mind is asleep and the deeper layers of consciousness can speak. Let's also consider the phenomenon of sudden, unexplainable talents. Throughout history, there have been prodigies who displayed extraordinary abilities at astonishingly young ages. Mozart was composing music at the age of 5. Other children demonstrate mastery of mathematics, painting, or even foreign languages without any formal training. Could this be evidence that the skills were cultivated in previous lives and carried forward, not as explicit memories, but as ingrained patterns in consciousness? While skeptics argue that genetics and environment explain prodigies, the possibility that consciousness brings forward talents is an intriguing alternative. When scientists try to map memory in the brain, they encounter something puzzling. Memories are not stored in one place like books on a shelf. Instead, they are distributed across networks of neurons, reassembled every time we recall them. This suggests memory is not a fixed object, but a dynamic process. If memory is a process rather than a thing, it could mean that the process might continue outside of the physical brain if consciousness is not bound to matter alone. Philosophically, this raises questions about personal identity. If you lived multiple lives and consciousness remembers them, are you still the same person? On the surface, you might say no. Your personality, body, and circumstances are different. But perhaps there is a deeper continuity, a core awareness that remains constant. Some traditions call this the soul, others simply call it pure consciousness. Whatever the name, the idea is that beneath the shifting stories of each lifetime lies the same experiencer, the one who perceives through every mask. If this is true, then memory might not belong to the personality, but to this deeper self. But why don't we remember clearly? Imagine being born with the memories of dozens of past lives fully intact. Every relationship, every loss, every trauma, every joy, all crowding into the mind of a newborn. It would be overwhelming, even paralyzing. Some traditions suggest that forgetting is a mercy, allowing each life to be lived freshly without the burden of the past. Yet forgetting may not be absolute. The traces could remain hidden, surfacing only in subtle ways. Through intuition, through déjà vu, through instincts and dreams. In this way, the past continues to shape the present without overwhelming it. Scientific research into near-death experiences provides another dimension. Many people who have clinically died and been revived report profound experiences, seeing light, meeting beings, or feeling a sense of timelessness. Some even report glimpses of past events not from their current life, but from others. While controversial, these accounts suggest that consciousness may hold more than one lifetime's worth of information, accessible at moments when the ordinary brain is offline. Then there are cultural practices designed specifically to access past life memory. In Tibetan Buddhism, meditation techniques aim to peel away the layers of ordinary perception and uncover deeper imprints carried by consciousness. Some shamans across the world use trance or plant medicines to journey into realms where they claim to see the past lives of themselves or others. While such practices cannot be easily measured in a laboratory, the consistency of these reports across cultures is striking. People separated by oceans and centuries have arrived at similar conclusions: that memory extends beyond the present lifetime. From a scientific perspective, we must also ask, could this all be imagination? Perhaps past life memories are simply stories generated by the brain, weaving together fragments of history and fantasy. This explanation is tempting, especially since memory is known to be unreliable and easily influenced. Yet it doesn't explain everything, particularly the cases where children remember highly specific details about people and places they could not have known. When those details check out, imagination alone seems insufficient as an explanation. At the same time, we should consider another possibility. Maybe consciousness doesn't remember every life in the way we think of memory. Maybe it doesn't recall events with perfect clarity, like a movie replaying. Instead, it may store experiences as patterns, lessons, and emotional imprints. These are carried forward not so much as stories, but as wisdom, tendencies, and seeds that shape the next existence. In this sense, memory is less about facts and more about essence. The specific details of one life may fade, but the growth it produced endures, woven into the fabric of consciousness itself. When you combine all of these perspectives, neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, and philosophy, a picture begins to emerge. Consciousness may well be something larger than the brain, with memory existing on multiple levels. Some memories are personal and fragile, tied to neurons and subject to decay. Others may be transpersonal, carried in consciousness beyond the body, influencing us in ways we only dimly perceive. Whether or not we recall every detail, it's possible that every experience we've ever had leaves some trace, some ripple, in the ocean of awareness. The mystery remains unresolved, but the exploration itself reveals something profound. By questioning whether consciousness remembers every life, we are also questioning what it means to be human. Are we bound by one story, or are we participants in a much larger journey? If every life is recorded in some way, then each of us might be far older and more complex than we realize, carrying within us a vast history written not in books or photographs, but in the fabric of awareness itself. If consciousness does remember more than one lifetime, the next challenge is figuring out where those memories are stored. Our everyday understanding of memory is rooted in biology, where the brain holds the key. But when we look closer, things get less clear. Neuroscience has uncovered many details about how memories are formed, yet it still hasn't solved the central mystery. What exactly is the physical basis of a memory, and how does it persist across time? If memories can't be pinned down to a single structure in the brain, then perhaps they exist in a way that transcends physical boundaries altogether. For example, when scientists study how memory works at a cellular level, they often focus on synaptic plasticity, the ability of connections between neurons to strengthen or weaken based on experience. This explains a lot about learning and habit formation, but it doesn't fully capture the richness of memory. Synapses change constantly, yet many memories last for decades. Where is the stability coming from? Some researchers propose that memory might be encoded in patterns of proteins, or even within the cytoskeleton of neurons. Others have suggested it could be embedded in quantum processes within microtubules, as in the Oort-Shoah theory. If this is true, memory may be woven into the very physics of reality, not just the chemistry of the brain. This is where the idea of non-local storage becomes interesting. Imagine consciousness as a kind of field that permeates reality, similar to how the electromagnetic field exists everywhere. Your brain might act as a receiver, accessing memories when needed, but not necessarily storing them entirely within itself. In this framework, memory could survive death because it was never confined to the brain in the first place. Instead, it would remain in the larger field, accessible to whatever form of consciousness emerges next. This mirrors the way radio signals exist independently of a particular radio. If one radio breaks, the signal doesn't vanish. It can still be picked up by another. Across different cultures, we see versions of this idea. The Hindu concept of the Akashic Records describes a vast, invisible library containing every event, thought, and experience in the universe. Mystics claim to access these records in altered states of awareness, describing them as if they were leafing through the book of existence itself. In Western esoteric traditions, similar ideas appear under different names, often associated with the collective memory of humanity or the soul's eternal record. These metaphors point to the possibility that memory is not private property locked inside a skull, but a shared and enduring resource. Skeptics naturally push back. If consciousness remembers every life, why is there no clear evidence? Why can't people access these memories at will? But here, the analogy of the radio signal can help again. Just because the signal exists doesn't mean every device can tune into it. The brain may be tuned in a very narrow way, optimized for survival in the present. Memories of other lifetimes might require a different state of consciousness, one that bypasses ordinary filters. This could explain why glimpses sometimes emerge in meditation, hypnosis, or dreams, when the usual barriers of rational thought relax. The idea of hidden memory also helps explain strange experiences that many people have without fully understanding them. Take intuition, for example. Sometimes you just know something without being able to explain why. It might be a person you feel you've met before, a place that feels uncannily familiar, or a decision that seems obvious despite lacking logical evidence. While psychology often explains intuition as subconscious pattern recognition, another possibility is that it taps into deeper memory, the residue of experiences not confined to this lifetime. Another domain where these hidden memories might manifest is in the realm of phobias and compulsions. Some people have intense fears that seem to have no basis in their personal history. A child who has never been near the ocean might panic at the sight of deep water. An adult might have a paralyzing fear of fire without ever having been burned. In clinical psychology, these are sometimes labeled irrational phobias. But if we entertain the possibility of past life memory, they could be echoes of experiences carried forward. The memory may not be conscious, but its emotional weight persists, shaping behavior in ways that defy ordinary explanation. On the positive side, talents and passions may also be influenced by memory beyond the present life. Why do some people feel an immediate connection to a particular culture, language, or art form that they've never been exposed to before? Why do some children show extraordinary abilities with little or no training? One possible answer is that these are not entirely new to them. They are rediscoveries of skills and affinities cultivated in earlier lives. The memory is not complete, but the imprint remains strong enough to resurface. Scientific inquiry into this area is limited, partly because the tools of measurement struggle to capture subjective experiences. Yet there have been notable attempts. The work of Dr. Ian Stevenson and his successor, Dr. Jim Tucker, stands out. Stevenson collected thousands of cases where young children spontaneously spoke of past lives. often with remarkable accuracy. Many of these children name places, people, and circumstances that were later confirmed by independent research. What makes these cases striking is that the children were often too young to have learned the information through ordinary means. While skeptics argue alternative explanations, the cumulative weight of the delta suggests that something unusual is happening, something that hints at memory beyond one lifetime. Then there is the question of why memory would exist this way at all. From an evolutionary standpoint, memory serves survival by helping us learn from experience. But if consciousness extends beyond a single life, the purpose of carrying memories across existences could be much larger. It might be about learning on a grander scale, accumulating wisdom not just for one lifetime, but for a longer journey of growth. This aligns with spiritual traditions that describe life as a classroom, with each incarnation offering new lessons. Memory, in this sense, may not be about clinging to details, but about integrating the essence of experience, ensuring progress over time. Philosophy provides another layer to this conversation. Thinkers like Plato and Pythagoras believed in the transmigration of the soul, where knowledge from past lives shapes the present. Plato even suggested that learning is actually remembering, an act of recollecting truths already known to the soul. This resonates with the idea that wisdom feels familiar because it is not entirely new. When you grasp a profound insight, it may be less about discovering it for the first time and more about remembering something that was always there. If this is true, then memory may not only be about the past, it may also stretch toward the future. Consciousness, carrying the lessons of many lives, might also anticipate what comes next, guiding choices in ways that feel like intuition or destiny. This would explain why certain opportunities feel charged with meaning, as if part of a larger pattern unfolding. The memory of past lives might be inseparable from the momentum of future lives, creating a continuous thread of growth. Of course, the scientific challenge remains. How do we test these ideas? Conventional experiments are designed to measure repeatable, observable phenomena. Past life memory does not neatly fit into this framework. It arises in subjective experience, in anecdotes, in personal stories that are difficult to verify. Yet science is not static. It evolves as new questions demand new methods. There was a time when electricity, germs, and quantum particles were invisible to measurement, yet eventually tools were created to study them. If consciousness and memory extend beyond the brain, perhaps the tools to study them have yet to be invented. In the meantime, we are left with a tapestry of clues: children's recollections, déjà vu, phobias, talents, mystical traditions, and the mysteries of neuroscience. None provide definitive proof, but together they form a pattern too intriguing to ignore. It may be that consciousness does remember every life, but not in the straightforward way we expect. Instead of detailed autobiographies preserved in perfect clarity, the memories may exist as impressions, tendencies, and seeds of wisdom, shaping who we are without our realizing it. This brings us to an important point. Whether or not the details of past lives are remembered, the idea itself changes how we see ourselves. If every life leaves an imprint, then each of us carries a vast history, one that makes us more than a single name or identity. We are mosaics of countless experiences, threads woven into a larger story that transcends time. That perspective alone can inspire humility and wonder, reminding us that who we are now may only be the latest chapter in a much longer narrative. One of the most compelling areas of evidence comes from personal accounts. These range from children with astonishingly specific memories of past identities to adults who undergo spontaneous recollections or visions that feel as vivid as any real experience. While such accounts don't meet the strict standards of laboratory science, they are powerful nonetheless, because they follow patterns that repeat across cultures and circumstances. By examining these stories closely, we might catch a glimpse of how memory could function beyond the boundaries of one lifetime. One of the most studied categories is that of children who recall past lives. Many of them, as young as 2 or 3, begin to describe details of people, places, and events they couldn't possibly have known. In some cases, the children even bear birthmarks or physical traits that correspond to injuries in the lives they claim to have lived before. Investigations by researchers like Dr. Ian Stevenson uncovered thousands of such cases worldwide, with recurring features. The children typically stop speaking about their past lives around the age of 6 or 7, as if the memories fade when the brain's normal development fully takes over. This suggests that memory might be clearer at the boundary between lifetimes, when consciousness is less anchored to the present body. For example, one boy in India described in detail the town and family he said he belonged to in his previous life. He gave names, landmarks, and circumstances of his death. When researchers travelled to the town, they found a family whose deceased relative matched the boy's account. The accuracy of the details was difficult to dismiss. Similar cases have been reported in Sri Lanka, Lebanon, Turkey, and the United States. Though each culture interprets the phenomenon differently, the structure of the experience is the same. A young child with unexplainable knowledge and often strong emotions tied to a life they insist they once lived. Adults sometimes report similar experiences, though usually through altered states of consciousness rather than spontaneous memory. Past life regression therapy is one such method, in which hypnosis is used to bypass the conscious mind and allow deeper impressions to surface. Subjects often describe vivid scenes from other times and places, speaking in detail about identities and events that feel entirely real to them. While skeptics argue these could be products of imagination, the depth and consistency of the experiences leave others convinced that they are tapping into genuine memory stored within consciousness. Another category is spontaneous memory triggered by powerful experiences. Some people report that while travelling to unfamiliar places, they feel an overwhelming sense of recognition. A street or a building feels instantly familiar, as though they had walked it many times before, even though they've never been there in this life. Sometimes this familiarity is accompanied by strong emotion, a wave of joy or sorrow that seems disproportionate to the moment. Could it be that the environment resonates with imprints of past experience, triggering a memory hidden deep within consciousness? Dreams also play a significant role in these recollections. Individuals often describe recurring dreams of lives that don't match their current identity. They dream of being in different bodies, speaking different languages, or living in historical settings they later discover are accurate. Unlike ordinary dreams, these tend to carry a weight of significance, leaving the dreamer convinced that they have touched something real. Dreams, in this way, could act as doorways to deeper layers of consciousness where memory from other lives still resides. Let's pause to consider how all of these experiences might be connected. One possibility is that the brain functions as a filter, allowing only a fraction of consciousness to enter ordinary awareness. Memories of other lives stored outside the brain may still exist, but they are normally blocked by the filter to prevent overwhelming confusion. Certain conditions, such as early childhood, hypnosis, dreams, or extraordinary emotional moments, may temporarily loosen the filter, allowing fragments of these deeper memories to surface. This would explain why the recollections are often incomplete or fleeting, rather than continuous and detailed. There is also the matter of collective patterns. Across cultures, people report similar themes in their supposed past life memories. Many describe dying in war, losing loved ones, or experiencing sudden accidents. These traumatic memories seem to surface more readily, perhaps because they left a stronger imprint. Just as trauma in one lifetime can dominate memory and behavior, trauma in another lifetime may echo across incarnations. It may not be that every detail is preserved equally. Some experiences might fade, while others remain sharp, depending on their emotional intensity. Skeptics point out that memory is fallible even within a single lifetime. People misremember events, confabulate details, and can be influenced by suggestion. So, they argue, past life memories could be nothing more than constructions of the imagination. However, what complicates this argument are the cases where the memories contain verifiable details the person could not have known. When a child in one country describes a village hundreds of miles away with perfect accuracy, including names of people who lived there, coincidence seems increasingly unlikely. If we accept that at least some past life memories are real, the question becomes, why do they matter? If consciousness remembers every life, what purpose does that serve? One answer lies in the concept of learning across lifetimes. Each experience adds to the wisdom of consciousness, even if we don't consciously recall it. Just as we don't remember every detail of our current life, yet still grow from our experiences, we may not recall past lives directly, but still carry their lessons forward. This could explain why certain challenges seem to follow us, or why we feel drawn to resolve particular issues, because they are part of a larger pattern of growth. Another reason memory might matter is for the continuity of identity. If you knew you had lived many times before, your sense of self would expand beyond the limits of a single lifetime. You might see yourself not as a temporary being, but as an eternal traveler, moving through different bodies and circumstances while carrying a continuous thread of awareness. That shift in perspective could transform how you view life, death, and the meaning of existence itself. Some traditions suggest that these memories also play a role in shaping destiny. The choices and actions of one life may set conditions for the next, not as punishment or reward, but as natural consequences of growth. Memory, in this sense, is the mechanism by which continuity is preserved. Without memory, the lessons would be lost, and consciousness would begin anew each time. With memory, whether conscious or unconscious, the journey has direction, allowing consciousness to evolve across many lifetimes. Interestingly, even within the framework of modern psychology, we see hints of this continuity. Carl Jung's idea of archetypes and the collective unconscious suggests that certain patterns of memory exist beyond the individual, shared across humanity. These patterns influence dreams, myths, and behavior, shaping us in ways that feel both deeply personal and universally human. Perhaps what Jung described as archetypes are part of the same continuum that includes past life memory, a deeper reservoir of consciousness that connects us all. Ultimately, the accounts of past life memories invite us to expand our understanding of what memory can be. They challenge the assumption that memory must be confined to the brain, and they suggest that consciousness may hold a far richer archive than we usually realize. Whether we interpret these memories as literal past lives, symbolic lessons, or expressions of a collective mind, they point to the same conclusion. Consciousness is far larger, older, and more mysterious than the boundaries of one lifetime would suggest. If we assume for a moment that consciousness is not confined to the brain, then where and how could these memories be stored? This question leads us into the fascinating territory of theories about non-local consciousness, information fields, and the possibility that reality itself functions as a vast memory system. One theory often discussed in both mystical and scientific circles is the idea that the universe itself records every event. Physicists have long debated whether information is ever truly lost. In classical physics, the assumption was that information could be destroyed. But developments in quantum theory, especially the paradoxes involving black holes, suggest otherwise. According to the principle of quantum information conservation, information may change form, but it cannot simply vanish. This has profound implications for our question. If every event leaves some kind of imprint on the universe, then every moment of every life could be preserved somewhere, waiting to be accessed. Some researchers and philosophers use the metaphor of the hologram to describe this. A hologram is a three-dimensional image made by recording light patterns, and what's remarkable is that every piece of a hologram contains the information of the whole. If you cut a holographic plate in half, each piece still contains the entire image, just at lower resolution. Applied to consciousness, this suggests that each of us might contain the memory of the entire whole, every life, every experience, embedded in a field that connects us to everything else. We normally access only a small part of it, but the larger memory remains present in the background. This idea resonates with the Akashic Records described in spiritual traditions. In these accounts, the universe is seen as a kind of library, where every thought, word, and deed is inscribed. Mystics claim to access these records during deep meditation or altered states, describing them as vast halls of knowledge where one can review not only personal lives but the entire sweep of history. While science has not verified such claims, the metaphor fits with the notion of a universe that never loses information. Consciousness, in this view, is not merely a product of biology, but a participant in a larger field where memory is eternal. But how might this work at a practical level? One possibility lies in quantum entanglement. When two particles become entangled, they remain connected no matter how far apart they are, with changes in one reflected instantly in the other. This suggests that information can exist in non-local ways, beyond the limits of space and time. If consciousness operates through similar mechanisms, then memories might be encoded in entangled states spread across the fabric of reality. This could explain why certain memories feel like sudden flashes or insights, as if consciousness has briefly tuned into a larger network. There are also more biological approaches to consider. Some scientists speculate that memory could be stored not just in the brain, but in the body as a whole. Cellular memory is the idea that cells, tissues, and even organs carry imprints of experience. Anecdotal evidence from organ transplant recipients supports this, with some reporting changes in tastes, habits, and even memories that seem to match those of their donors. If memory can be stored in cells, then perhaps it can also be transferred at death, carried in subtle ways by the essence of consciousness into another form of life. At the psychological level, memory does not always function as a clear record. Much of what we carry forward are impressions, emotions, and patterns rather than specific details. This is true within a single lifetime, and it may also apply across lifetimes. A child might not recall the exact events of a past life, but they might carry a strong emotional resonance, an unexplained fear, a natural affinity, or an intuitive knowledge. In this way, memory becomes less about facts and more about tendencies, guiding the shape of consciousness without overwhelming it with too much information. If we step back and think about this in terms of learning, the picture becomes clearer. Memory exists to help us adapt and grow. Within one life, we don't remember every moment, but we retain the lessons. Perhaps the same is true across many lives. Consciousness does not need to recall every detail. It only needs to carry forward the essence, the wisdom gained, and the unfinished work. This makes sense from a practical standpoint. If you were born with the burden of countless lifetimes of memories, it might be impossible to function. But if you carry the distilled lessons, you can continue growing without being crushed by the weight of the past. Consider how this idea shows up in culture. Stories of reincarnation often emphasize moral or spiritual growth. A person may return to work through unresolved challenges or to cultivate new qualities. Memory in this context is not about trivia, but about continuity of purpose. Even if you don't consciously remember who you were, the deeper layers of consciousness still carry the momentum of your journey. In this way, memory is less about the past and more about shaping the future. There are also hints in the natural world that memory may be a more fundamental property of reality than we realize. For example, certain crystals and materials have the ability to retain information about their structure or environment, sometimes for millions of years. In biology, DNA serves as a memory system that records the instructions for building life and passes them forward across generations. If matter itself has the ability to preserve information, then why not consciousness? Perhaps memory is woven into the very structure of the universe, and consciousness is simply the aspect of reality that accesses and interprets it. Philosophically, this challenges our assumptions about time. We think of the past as gone, but if information is never lost, then in some sense the past still exists. Consciousness, by remembering, is reaching into a layer of reality where all moments are still present. This opens up fascinating possibilities. When someone recalls a past life, they may not just be remembering, but actually connecting with a moment that continues to exist in the deeper fabric of time. Memory, in this sense, is not just a recording, but a bridge across dimensions. This perspective also reshapes how we think about identity. If consciousness remembers every life, then who you are is not confined to the present name and body. You are an accumulation of experiences stretching back through many forms, each adding to the richness of your being. At the same time, the essence that observes remains constant. This duality, changing forms yet enduring awareness, may be the key to understanding what memory really means at the level of consciousness. Of course, we must acknowledge the limits of our understanding. Much of this remains speculative, blending scientific ideas with philosophical speculation and spiritual insight. But even without final proof, the patterns are compelling. We see evidence in children's memories, in sudden intuitions, in dreams, in unexplained talents, and in the mysteries of physics and biology. Each clue suggests that memory may be more expansive than we assume, and that consciousness may indeed carry the imprint of many lives. Whether we think of it as quantum information, cellular memory, the Akashic field, or the collective unconscious, the idea points to the same conclusion. Consciousness is not a blank slate each time it appears. It carries history, even if that history is hidden from ordinary awareness. And that history is what allows growth, continuity, and meaning across the vast journey of existence. After all, what good is remembering if the memories remain locked away? This brings us into the territory of altered states, triggers, and the mysterious conditions under which hidden memories seem to emerge. One of the most intriguing phenomena connected to this is déjà vu. Many people report sudden feelings that they have already experienced a particular situation, even though it appears to be happening for the first time. Science often explains this as a quirk of the brain, a misfiring in the memory system that causes the present to feel familiar. But some thinkers interpret déjà vu differently, as a brief moment when consciousness taps into a memory from another life. Perhaps the brain misinterprets it because it doesn't fit within the current lifetime, but the sense of recognition remains. If this is true, then déjà vu is less a glitch and more a clue that memory is larger than we realize. Dreams are another window into this possibility. People sometimes dream of places, people, or events that feel intensely real, yet have no connection to their current life. Certain recurring dreams can feel like fragments of another identity, another time. In some cases, these dreams line up with historical events or cultures the dreamer had no knowledge of while awake. Psychologists may explain this as the unconscious mind generating narratives from stored impressions. But another interpretation is that dreams allow consciousness to drift beyond the limitations of the present body and access deeper layers of memory. Hypnosis has been used as a tool to uncover hidden memories, including supposed past lives. Under deep relaxation, some individuals recall names, locations, and events that do not belong to their current identity. Critics argue that these recollections may be the result of suggestion or imagination, yet in a number of documented cases, the details have matched real historical records. Whether or not every claim stands up to scrutiny, the phenomenon is difficult to dismiss entirely. It raises the possibility that the subconscious mind contains much more information than we consciously recognize, and that some of that information may originate beyond the current lifetime. Even outside of hypnosis, spontaneous memories sometimes arise, especially in children. Young children occasionally speak about past experiences with striking detail, describing places they have never visited or identities they could not possibly know. What makes these accounts compelling is not only the specificity, but also the consistency with which they occur across cultures and eras. In some cases, children lose these memories as they grow older, suggesting that the connection to past lives may fade as the brain develops and focuses more fully on the present. This implies that consciousness holds the memory, but the developing brain filters it for practical reasons. If consciousness truly remembers everything, then why are we not constantly overwhelmed by an avalanche of memory? The answer may lie in the protective function of forgetting. Within a single lifetime, we forget vast amounts of detail because remembering everything would be paralyzing. Memory is selective, preserving what is useful and letting go of what is not. Perhaps the same applies across lifetimes. The memories are there, but most of them are veiled, only surfacing when they serve a purpose. Forgetting, then, is not a flaw, but a survival mechanism that allows consciousness to focus on its current path. Still, this raises another fascinating question. Are there ways to train consciousness to access more of these hidden memories? Throughout history, many traditions have developed practices aimed at precisely that. Meditation, for example, is often said to quiet the noise of ordinary thought, allowing deeper layers of awareness to emerge. Some meditators report vivid visions of other lives, sometimes with emotional intensity that feels indistinguishable from real experience. Whether these visions are literal memories or symbolic expressions of the subconscious, they point to a deeper reservoir of knowledge. Shamanic practices and rituals in indigenous cultures often aim to journey into other realms of consciousness, where ancestral memories and spirit identities can be encountered. In these traditions, memory is not confined to the individual, but extends to the lineage and even the environment. The land remembers, the ancestors remember, and by entering altered states, one can tap into those broader streams of consciousness. This collective approach to memory broadens the idea of what remembering means. It is not just personal, but communal, stretching across generations and ecosystems. Even in modern science, we see hints that memory might not be entirely personal. The psychologist Carl Jung proposed the idea of the collective unconscious, a layer of the psyche shared by all humans. This collective unconscious contains archetypes, universal symbols and patterns that appear in myths, dreams, and cultures across the world. While Jung did not frame this as past life memory, It suggests that consciousness carries shared knowledge beyond individual experience. If consciousness remembers every life, it may not only recall personal histories, but also tap into a vast well of collective memory. Technology has also entered this discussion. Some futurists speculate about the possibility of mapping or storing consciousness, capturing its contents in digital form. If such a thing were possible, would we find evidence of multiple lifetimes stored within the mind structure? Could advanced scanning reveal layers of memory that stretch beyond a single existence? While this remains in the realm of speculation, it reflects humanity's growing interest in treating consciousness as more than an ephemeral phenomenon, something that could potentially be studied, mapped, and understood as an enduring system. Philosophically, the question of memory also intersects with questions of identity. If you could suddenly remember every life you've ever lived, would you still feel like yourself? Or would the flood of memories dissolve the boundaries of your current identity, merging you with countless others? Some traditions suggest that the ultimate goal of spiritual growth is precisely this dissolution, that the self is an illusion created by selective memory. By remembering everything, consciousness may finally realize its unity with all existence. On the other hand, there is value in limitation. Identity gives us focus, a sense of place in the vastness of reality. Forgetting serves as a tool that allows us to live this life fully, without being distracted by the echoes of the past. Perhaps consciousness remembers everything in potential, but only allows fragments to surface at the right times. In this way, memory is not just about storage or access, but about timing and relevance. There is also the possibility that memory is layered, much like geological strata. At the surface are the memories of daily life easily accessed. Beneath that are deeper memories, childhood, subconscious impressions, and dreams. Further down are the transpersonal layers, archetypes, ancestral patterns, and perhaps past lives. Each layer requires a different state of consciousness to reach, and most people live within the surface layers. But through practice, intention, or spontaneous events, deeper layers sometimes break through. This layered model helps explain why past life memories often appear unexpectedly, as if a crack has opened between levels of the mind. Time is the framework through which we experience beginnings and endings, yet if consciousness extends beyond the brain, it may not be bound by linear time at all. What we perceive as a sequence of lifetimes might, at a deeper level, exist simultaneously. This possibility challenges not only how we understand memory, but how we understand reality itself. Consider how memory works within one lifetime. The brain does not replay past events like a film reel. Instead, it reconstructs them. Each time we recall a moment, we are reassembling fragments, images, sounds, emotions, into a cohesive story. Neuroscience shows that memory is dynamic, not static, and can even change with each recall. If consciousness operates on a wider scale, then perhaps what we call past life memory is not a literal replay, but a reconstruction, pieced together from a field of timeless information. In this sense, remembering another life may not mean traveling backward in time, but tuning into a different thread of experience that still exists. This brings us to the concept of the eternal present, an idea found in both mysticism and physics. Some interpretations of relativity suggest that past, present, and future are equally real, and that time is more like a landscape than a river. We move through it, but all the terrain is there simultaneously. If consciousness is not limited to the perspective of the body, it may be able to shift awareness between different parts of this landscape. What feels like a memory of another life could be consciousness accessing another point in the timeless field of existence. Mystics often describe profound states of awareness in which they feel connected to all times at once. In such states, personal identity becomes fluid, and the boundaries between lifetimes blur. A monk meditating in silence, a shaman entering trance, or a mystic in deep prayer may report experiences of being not only themselves, but also other people, animals, or even elements of nature. These accounts suggest that memory, at its deepest level, may not be about retrieving the past, but about recognizing the unity of all experience. Even science provides curious hints that support these ideas. Quantum mechanics demonstrates that particles can exist in superposition, occupying multiple states until observed. Some interpretations propose that every possibility exists, branching into different outcomes. If consciousness is fundamental, then perhaps memory is not about tracking one linear life after another, but about accessing different strands of possibility. What we call past lives could be parallel lives, each one part of the vast web of potential experience. This possibility also explains why past life memories often seem fragmented. People who recall them rarely produce a full biography. Instead, they describe brief flashes, a face, a place, a moment of intense emotion. These fragments may not be accidental. They could be glimpses into parallel identities, moments that resonate with the present self because of their emotional or symbolic significance. Just as ordinary dreams often feel like collages rather than coherent stories, so too might deeper memories appear as fragments drawn from a wider field. Philosophy has long grappled with these questions. Plato wrote of anamnesis, the idea that learning is really remembering. According to this view, the soul already contains knowledge from previous existences, and education is simply the process of bringing it to light. If true, then the insights and intuitions we experience in daily life may be subtle forms of past life memory, not in the sense of recalling specific events, but in the sense of accessing wisdom gathered across many lifetimes. A moment of sudden understanding, a flash of creative inspiration, or a deep sense of knowing may be evidence of consciousness remembering itself. Artists and inventors often describe such experiences. A composer may hear a melody in their mind as if it already exists. A scientist may envision a solution without consciously working through the steps. These experiences feel less like invention and more like discovery. Could it be that what we call genius is, in part, the remembering of knowledge accumulated across lifetimes? If so, then the boundaries between memory, creativity, and intuition become far less distinct. There is also the emotional dimension of memory to consider. Sometimes we encounter a person and feel an immediate bond, as though we have known them forever. Other times we feel an inexplicable resistance, as if carrying unfinished business. These powerful reactions may be more than psychological. They may be echoes of connections formed in other lives. Consciousness, remembering at a deep level, responds with familiarity even when the details remain hidden. In this way, relationships themselves may serve as triggers for remembering. In cultures that embrace reincarnation, this idea often brings comfort. The sense that loved ones will be encountered again, that bonds endure beyond a single life, provides meaning and continuity. Even outside of such traditions, many people feel that certain relationships are meant to be, as if guided by something larger. Whether we interpret this through karma, destiny, or the persistence of memory, the underlying idea is the same. Consciousness remembers its connections, and those memories shape the paths we walk. Yet the possibility of remembering everything also raises challenges. Imagine fully recalling not only the joys of past lives, but also the sorrows, mistakes, and traumas. Could a person bear the weight of such knowledge? Perhaps this is why memory is often veiled. Consciousness may protect itself by limiting access, allowing us to carry forward only what is useful in the present moment. Forgetting is not an absence of memory, but a filter, a compassionate design that makes growth possible. This brings us to the role of choice. Some traditions suggest that before entering a new life, consciousness chooses what to remember and what to forget. The veil of forgetting is intentional, allowing each life to be experienced freshly while still carrying the essence of prior lessons. This idea reframes memory not as a random process, but as part of a purposeful journey. Consciousness remembers everything in potential, but only reveals what is aligned with its current path of growth. Modern research into near-death experiences adds another layer to this discussion. Many people who have come close to death report life reviews, in which they relive not only their own experiences, but also the effects of their actions on others. These reviews are often described as vivid, detailed, and profoundly meaningful. If such experiences are real, they suggest that consciousness holds an extraordinarily complete record, one that extends beyond ordinary memory. After returning to life, most people do not retain the full detail of the review, but they often carry a transformed perspective, as if a deeper layer of memory has left its mark. On one hand, evidence suggests that fragments of memory appear in dreams, déjà vu, sudden intuition, or even in the lives of children who speak of experiences they could not have lived. On the other hand, our everyday awareness is strikingly limited, giving us only small glimpses into what may be a much vaster storehouse of memory. This paradox raises a profound question. Perhaps consciousness does remember everything, but human awareness is not designed to access it all at once. We can think of consciousness like a vast ocean. On the surface, we see the waves, daily memories, thoughts, and experiences. But beneath the waves lies the deep sea, stretching into unimaginable depths, holding currents and patterns that have been moving for eons. We only perceive the surface because our survival depends on it. But the depths are always there, and occasionally, something from below rises to the surface, startling us with a glimpse of what lies beyond. Past life memory, in this sense, may be one of those deep currents breaking into our awareness. Some of the most fascinating accounts of these deep memories come from children who describe past lives with remarkable accuracy. Researchers have documented thousands of such cases, noting details that were later verified in historical records. What makes these stories compelling is not only the specificity of the memories, but also the emotions that accompany them. Children often speak with conviction, as though they are not inventing but recalling something vivid and real. As they grow older, these memories usually fade, suggesting that the young mind is less shielded by the filters of the brain, and therefore more open to the deeper memory field of consciousness. But memory does not always appear as narrative. Sometimes it comes in the form of unexplained skills. A child who has never studied music sits at a piano and plays with uncanny familiarity. A person picks up a new language with unusual ease. These abilities may be explained as genetic predispositions, but they also raise the question of whether consciousness is carrying forward patterns of knowledge. If the universe wastes nothing, then the skills and wisdom we acquire may not vanish at death, but instead remain stored in consciousness, re-emerging in future lives. Beyond individual cases, there are also cultural memories that seem to echo across generations. Myths, legends, and archetypes repeat themselves in strikingly similar forms around the world. Different cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, tell stories of floods, heroes, underworlds, and cosmic battles. How do such patterns persist? One explanation is that they arise from shared human experience. Another possibility is that they are remembered fragments of collective journeys, stored in consciousness itself. If all lives are part of a single continuum, then memory may not be entirely personal, but shared across humanity. Jung's concept of the collective unconscious fits here. According to Jung, beneath the personal unconscious lies a deeper layer filled with universal archetypes, images and symbols that shape the human psyche across time and culture. These archetypes are not learned but inherited, present in all of us. If consciousness remembers every life, these archetypes may represent the distilled essence of countless lifetimes, woven into the very fabric of our awareness. Memory, in this sense, is not about details, but about patterns, shaping how we think, dream, and create. Another layer of this mystery is found in near-death experiences. People who have nearly died often describe an overwhelming sense of review, in which they relive not only their own lives, but also the effects of their actions on others. They describe feeling every emotion they caused, as if experiencing life from multiple perspectives. If these reports are accurate, they suggest that consciousness holds a complete record, far more complete than ordinary memory allows. The fact that most people do not retain these memories after returning to life may indicate that memory is selectively veiled for our own well-being. This brings us to the question of why memory would be hidden. If consciousness truly remembers every life, why not allow us to access it freely? One answer is that forgetting serves a purpose. Just as within a single life we forget most details to avoid being overwhelmed, across lifetimes memory may be filtered, so that we can focus on the present. If we were born remembering every pain, every failure, every regret of countless lifetimes, we might be unable to move forward. Forgetting, therefore, is not the loss of memory, but the protection of it. The knowledge is still there, waiting in the depths, but only the most relevant parts rise to the surface. The veiling of memory may also be connected to free will. If you remembered every detail of past choices and their consequences, you might feel locked into patterns or overwhelmed by guilt. By beginning each life with a veil, you are free to make choices anew, guided subtly by the essence of past memory, but not constrained by it. Consciousness remembers everything, but human awareness is given only what it needs to take the next step. Still, there are ways in which the veil thins. Mystics, shamans, and spiritual seekers have long practiced techniques designed to pierce the veil of forgetting. Through meditation, ritual, or trance, they report accessing layers of memory beyond the present life. These experiences often bring not just information, but transformation, a sense of being more than one lifetime, more than one identity. Even when the details are vague, the emotional impact is profound, as if consciousness is reminding itself of its vast journey. Scientific exploration, while more cautious, has also begun to touch this frontier. Studies of consciousness increasingly suggest that it may not be confined to the brain. Quantum theories of mind propose that consciousness could be a fundamental property of the universe, interacting with matter but not reducible to it. If so, then memory may not be stored in neurons, but in a larger field, accessible through the brain but not limited by it. The brain may act like a receiver, tuning into different frequencies of memory depending on its state. This would explain why altered states of consciousness, whether through meditation, near-death experiences, or even certain chemicals, seem to open the door to expanded memory. The possibility that consciousness remembers everything also changes how we think about identity. We usually define ourselves by our current memories, the story of this lifetime. But if consciousness holds countless other stories, then who are we really? Are we the sum of all these lives, or are we the witness that observes them? Many traditions suggest the latter, that beneath the changing identities, there is an unchanging awareness. Memory is vast and varied, but the one who remembers is always the same. This realization carries both wonder and responsibility. If every action, every choice, every word is remembered in the deeper fabric of consciousness, then nothing is lost. The kindness we show, the harm we cause, the lessons we learn, they all remain part of the eternal record. Life becomes less about isolated moments and more about a continuous unfolding. Memory, in this sense, is not only a storehouse, but also a mirror, reflecting back to us the full journey of who we are. Whether or not we consciously recall every life, the memory shapes us. It appears in our instincts, our attractions, our fears, our talents, and our sense of meaning. Consciousness carries it forward, weaving it into the present in ways we may not recognize but constantly live. To remember is to grow, and perhaps that is the true purpose of consciousness. Not to store every detail, but to carry forward the essence of all experience, transforming it into wisdom. As we near the end of this exploration, it becomes clear that the question of whether consciousness remembers every life is not only about memory itself, but about the nature of existence. To ask whether we remember is to ask what it means to be human, what it means to be aware, and what it means to evolve through time. Memory, in this vast context, is less about personal recollection and more about continuity, the thread that links countless moments into a single, unbroken tapestry of being. The notion that nothing is ever lost is deeply woven into both science and spirituality. Physics tells us that energy and information cannot be destroyed. They only change form. If this principle applies to consciousness, then every thought, feeling, and experiencer must leave an imprint somewhere. Whether stored in a quantum field, etched into the fabric of space-time, or carried in some dimension we have yet to comprehend, memory may be as eternal as the universe itself. Consciousness, as the observer and participant in reality, may be the medium through which this memory is preserved and accessed. But if consciousness truly remembers everything, why is our daily awareness so narrow? Why do we live with such profound amnesia about our past? The answer may lie in the role of limitation. Just as a spotlight allows us to focus on one part of a stage while the rest remains in shadow, forgetting allows us to live fully in the present. Without this focus, we might drown in the vastness of memory, unable to act or choose. Memory, therefore, is not erased but filtered, with only the most relevant aspects surfacing to guide our journey. This perspective reframes memory as a tool for growth. Each lifetime is a classroom, and consciousness carries forward the lessons, not the clutter of every detail. Just as we may not recall every moment of childhood but retain its essential teachings, consciousness may not present us with every past life memory, but still guide us through its accumulated wisdom. This helps explain why we sometimes encounter situations that feel strangely familiar, as if we have practiced them before. Consciousness, remembering in its own way, nudges us toward growth by drawing on what has already been learned. The phenomenon of karmic patterns fits into this view. Many traditions hold that unresolved actions or emotions carry forward into future lives, shaping circumstances until balance is restored. In this sense, memory is not about recollecting facts, but about carrying forward the emotional weight of choices. The anger left unresolved, the compassion cultivated, the love unfinished. These become threads in the tapestry of future experience. Memory is not passive storage, but active momentum, propelling consciousness through its journey of evolution. Dreams provide another fascinating window into how memory might operate beyond a single life. Some dreams feel trivial, mere echoes of daily concerns. Others feel archetypal, powerful, or deeply mysterious. In these, we may encounter characters or landscapes that bear no relation to our present life, but feel profoundly meaningful. Could these be fragments of memory surfacing from other lifetimes, or are they symbolic representations drawn from a deeper collective storehouse? Either way, they point to layers of memory that transcend the limits of personal biography. Modern accounts of spontaneous past life memories often carry an emotional charge that cannot be easily explained. A person may suddenly experience overwhelming grief at visiting a battlefield they have never studied, or an inexplicable sense of belonging in a culture foreign to them. Such experiences are often dismissed as coincidence or imagination, yet their intensity suggests something more. If consciousness remembers everything, then perhaps these are moments when the veil thins, when a deeper resonance breaks through to remind us of our continuity. Even in ordinary life, we encounter subtle echoes of this continuity. The people we meet, the places we are drawn to, the choices we feel compelled to make, these may all be guided by the deeper memory of consciousness. We may not recall the reasons, but the pull is undeniable. It is as though an unseen compass, shaped by countless lifetimes, is steering us toward the experiences we need. Memory, in this sense, is not just about the past, but about the future, guiding us toward the fulfillment of a larger journey. Philosophers have long wrestled with the implications of such continuity. If consciousness remembers every life, then identity is not fixed but fluid, expanding beyond the boundaries of any one name or body. Who then are we? Are we the sum of all our memories, or are we the witness that observes them? Perhaps the answer is both. We are the evolving story shaped by countless chapters, and we are also the storyteller, the unchanging awareness that experiences them all. Memory is the bridge between these two truths, giving continuity to change while anchoring it in an eternal observer. The implications are profound. If nothing is lost, if every life is remembered in some form, then meaning is woven into existence itself. Every joy, every sorrow, every choice contributes to the unfolding whole. We may not recall the details, but they are never wasted. The universe itself carries them, and consciousness, in ways we do not fully understand, integrates them into the ongoing journey. To live is to remember, and to remember is to become. This brings us to a final paradox. If consciousness remembers everything, then perhaps remembering and forgetting are not opposites, but partners. Forgetting allows us to focus, remembering allows us to expand. Between the two, life unfolds as a rhythm, sometimes narrow, sometimes vast, always moving toward greater awareness. The challenge is not to recall every detail, but to trust that the memory is there, shaping us in ways we cannot always see. As we reflect on this, the question remains: what would it mean to fully remember? Would we become overwhelmed, or would we awaken to a deeper truth of who we are? Perhaps the answer lies in balance. Memory reveals itself in fragments, in moments of resonance, in flashes of intuition, giving us just enough to remind us of the vastness we belong to. Full remembering may not be necessary for growth. What matters is that consciousness carries it all, guiding us through the mystery of existence, lifetime after lifetime. As we arrive at the final stage of this journey, the question lingers like an echo through the corridors of thought. Does consciousness truly hold the record of every existence it has ever touched? To even approach an answer requires us to step beyond the narrow confines of individual memory and into the vast field of awareness itself. Here, the lines between science, philosophy, and spirituality blur. weaving together a picture both humbling and awe-inspiring. The idea that all experiences are recorded is not new. Ancient traditions spoke of the Akashic Records, an ethereal library said to contain every thought, word, and action of every being across all time. Mystics believed that in states of deep meditation or altered consciousness, one could glimpse these records and retrieve forgotten truths. Whether literal or metaphorical, this concept suggests that memory is not confined to the brain, but exists in a universal field that consciousness can access when conditions are right. Science, in its own language, hints at a similar possibility. Physicists have argued that information is never truly destroyed. Even when matter is burned to ash, the information about its state is preserved at some fundamental level. Black holes, once thought to consume information irretrievably, are now understood to encode it in subtle ways across their event horizons. If the universe itself guards information so jealously, why would consciousness, the very medium through which we experience reality, be any less comprehensive? Perhaps every heartbeat, every thought, every lifetime is stored within the very fabric of existence, waiting to be remembered. This possibility reshapes our understanding of identity. We often think of ourselves as isolated beings defined by a single lifetime. But if consciousness remembers everything, then each of us is less an individual and more a constellation, a vast network of experiences spread across centuries, cultures, and forms. Each lifetime is like a single star, and together they form the galaxy of who we are. We may identify with one star at a time, but the fullness of our being includes them all. The challenge, of course, is access. In daily life, our awareness is narrowed to the present incarnation. We wake, eat, work, love, and dream without conscious knowledge of the larger pattern. But subtle hints break through. Déjà vu that feels too precise to be chance, unexplainable affinities for times or places, sudden wisdom that seems beyond our years. These glimpses may be consciousness tugging at the veil, reminding us that the present chapter is connected to a story far older and far grander than we can currently imagine. What purpose, then, does forgetting serve? Paradoxically, it may be the very engine of growth. Imagine remembering every triumph and every mistake across countless lives. The weight of such memory might paralyze us, trapping us in nostalgia or regret. Forgetting allows for renewal. Each life becomes a fresh canvas on which to paint new choices, free from the overwhelming burden of everything that came before. Yet forgetting is never absolute. The lessons are carried forward, embedded not in explicit memory, but in the quiet shaping of character, the deep instincts of the soul. We forget the details but retain the wisdom, and in this way, memory fulfills its purpose without overwhelming us. As human understanding deepens, technology begins to explore these mysteries in unexpected ways. Neuroscience maps the networks of memory in the brain, uncovering how fragile yet intricate our recall can be. Artificial intelligence learns to recognize patterns and store vast data, raising new questions about what constitutes memory and consciousness itself. Could a machine ever remember in the way a soul might? Or is true memory inseparable from the lived experience of awareness? Such questions push us to refine not only our definitions, but also our humility in the face of what remains unknown. The search for memory beyond one lifetime is also the search for meaning. If consciousness carries all experiences forward, then nothing is wasted. Every hardship becomes a lesson, every act of kindness a seed planted for the future. Even pain contributes to the expansion of understanding, forging resilience and empathy. To remember every life is not merely to catalogue events. it is to recognize the underlying purpose woven through them. The greater memory of consciousness may be less about retaining facts and more about guiding the soul toward wholeness. This idea changes how we might view death. Instead of an end, death becomes a doorway through which consciousness transitions, carrying with it the essence of experience. Just as we shed childhood without losing its lessons, so too might we shed lifetimes without losing their wisdom. What appears as loss is in truth transformation, a process of refinement through which consciousness becomes ever more aware of itself. And yet the mystery remains intact. Science cannot prove the full scope of memory. Philosophy cannot resolve its paradoxes. Spirituality can only gesture toward its vastness. Perhaps this is fitting. Consciousness, like the universe it inhabits, may be inexhaustible, forever inviting us to wonder. The question itself becomes part of the journey, a reminder that seeking is as important as knowing. Still, certain patterns emerge with clarity. Consciousness may not grant us full recollection, but it leaves traces, in intuition, in inspiration, in the inexplicable connections we feel to others. These are the footprints of a larger memory moving through us, reminding us that our lives are part of something greater. When we listen to these subtle signs, we align ourselves with that greater continuity, even if we cannot fully see it. In the quiet moments of reflection, when the noise of the world falls away, one can almost sense this continuity. It is like hearing a distant melody carried on the wind, familiar, haunting beyond words. Perhaps this is what it means for consciousness to remember. Not a list of details, but a resonance, a vibration that carries across lifetimes, binding them together into a single unfolding song. So, does consciousness remember every life you've ever lived? The truest answer may be both yes and no. Yes, in the sense that nothing is lost, that every moment leaves its imprint upon the eternal awareness we share. And no, in the sense that we, as individuals, do not always access those memories directly. Forgetting and remembering are both part of the design, ensuring that each life is lived fully, yet none of it is wasted. As this exploration comes to a close, let us return to the present moment. Whatever the mysteries of memory may be, here and now, we are conscious, alive and aware. That, in itself, is extraordinary. Perhaps the greatest remembering is not of past lives, but of this one. Remembering to be present, to be kind, to be curious, to be awake. In doing so, we honour not only this life, but all the lives that may have come before, and all those yet to come. And as you let these thoughts settle, you may notice a gentle calm spreading through you. The questions, though vast, no longer demand immediate answers. They simply invite wonder, reflection, and peace. You do not need to recall every lifetime tonight. It is enough to rest in the knowing that consciousness carries it all, guiding you with quiet wisdom, shaping the path forward. So as you drift now into rest, may your mind soften, your body grow still, and your awareness gently open to the mystery. Whatever lives you have lived, whatever journeys lie ahead, trust that nothing is forgotten, and nothing is ever truly lost. Consciousness remembers, and in that remembrance, you are always whole. Sleep well, and may your dreams carry you gently through the infinite tapestry of your being.